America. It was never perfect from the beginning, as I say all the time, but I want you to know this is the place to be. I will still continue to agitate, educate, and organize. It's a big peace rally on the Mall in Washington, D.C. on February 19th. We'll watch that, see how the mainstream media covers it. But this is America. It's the place I want to be. It is. There's no doubt about it. When we get stronger. People talk about coming together. I don't know if we'll ever come together. There'll always be a different way of doing things in this country. Good night, everybody.
Let's figure this out. This is our city.
Right.
And there's people being physically harmed and now economically harmed.
It's a cesspool, man.
We've got to find a way to do better than this.
The Big K Morning Show with Larry and Marty. Weekday mornings 5:30 till 10 on 100.1 FM, AM 1020, KDKA.com, and on the Odyssey app.
The toilet stinks. Every flush spews bacteria onto surfaces that little Bobby touches and then spreads to the light switch and everywhere else in the house. Yuck. So Dad uses Microban 24 to help stop the spread. It's the only sanitizing spray with a long-lasting shield that keeps killing 99.9% of bacteria on surfaces for up to 24 hours. Be confident you're protecting your family with Microban 24. Don't just sanitize it, Microban it.
As a Walgreens pharmacist, I talk with people all the time about little tips and tricks for filling their Medicare prescriptions, like taking advantage of Walgreens 90-day refills to save them a trip, or using Refill by Scan, which is super easy and right on your phone. And for anybody worried about prescription costs, I say, hey, we got you, with low-cost copays on many medications.
Let's talk about making things easier. Walgreens is here. Fill your way and save at walgreens.com/Medicare. See pharmacists for restrictions and exclusions.
100.1 FM and AM 1020 KDKA. Covered by JP Roofing and Siding, Pittsburgh's #1 platinum preferred roofing company.
All the news you need for your day and the sports, music, and podcasts you love are all on the free Odyssey app. Download now.
KDKA and KDKA FM HD2 Pittsburgh, W261 AX Pittsburgh.
Always live on the free Odyssey app. From the Aetna Medicare Advantage Studios.
Pittsburgh's news, weather, and traffic station. News Radio. This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Linda Kenyon in Washington. Another aerial object has been shot down by the U.S. military today. Melissa Dalton, an Assistant Secretary of Defense, explains why.
These most recent objects do not pose a kinetic military threat, but they're passed in proximity to sensitive DoD sites, and the altitude that they were flying could be a hazard to civilian aviation and thus raise concern.
There have been 3 shootdowns in 3 days. One was coordinated with Canada.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau doubled down on his decision to take out an unidentified object over the Yukon on Saturday.
It represented a reasonable threat to civilian aircraft, so I gave the order to take it down.
U.S. and Canadian forces are now in recovery mode, piecing together several objects that American fighter jets shot down.
CBS's Skylar Henry. These latest incidents are separate from the shoot-down last week of a large Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina. The second half of the Super Bowl is underway after an exciting first half.
Jalen Hurts had a remarkable first half. He completed 17 of 22 passes. He accounted for 3 touchdowns, 2 with his feet, 1 with his arm, as the Philadelphia Eagles took a 24-14 halftime lead. Patrick Mahomes had a decent first half. He completed 8 of 13 passes, but only for 89 yards and 1 touchdown pass. The Chiefs are going to have to do better in the second half if they want to win this game. Steve Futterman, CBS News, at the Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona.
Russia has been relying on paid fighters from the notorious Wagner Group to bolster its ranks in the fight against Ukraine. CBS's Deborah Potter spoke exclusively with one of the mercenaries who was captured.
A hired gun, no longer calling the shots. We met Wagner mercenary Vlad being held by Ukrainian military intelligence. The murky Kremlin-backed paramilitary group has been leading the charge in the bloody battle for Bakhmut, bolstered by convicts recruited from Russian penal colonies. Vlad said he'd already served over half of a 3-year jail term when he accepted a devil's deal, fighting in Ukraine for freedom and cash.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Chris Sununu says the decision by Democrats to move their first 2024 primary from New Hampshire to South Carolina is a big mistake for President Biden.
I just don't believe that Democrat left-wing elite is going to sit on the sidelines knowing you could come to New Hampshire, get all the earned media, all the attention, without a whole lot of money, all that political momentum. He's opened up his political flank, so to say.
Governor Sununu appeared on CBS's Face the Nation. This is CBS News.
You know, it's true. Difficult times have a way of focusing us. We have to think about what matters most when it comes to our spending, our health care. No doubt. This is why so many people are joining MediShare right now. MediShare is a trusted way to save up to 50% on your monthly healthcare costs. More than 400,000 people have already made the switch. It's pretty obvious why, too, especially now during this challenging season with healthcare costs and out-of-pocket expenses going up. MediShare can save you a lot of money. The typical family saves $500 a month. And MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry that's worked beautifully for 29 years. There are different options to choose from to fit your budget. I'll give you the number here in a second, and if you call, you can get a price within 2 minutes. Maybe now is the perfect time to make the switch and start saving. Here you go. Call 866-88-BIBLE. That's 866-88-BIBLE. 866-88-BIBLE.
A baby in Kentucky is now the first infant to be anonymously dropped off in a safe haven baby box. CBS's Monica Ricks explains.
A Safe Haven baby box allows mothers in crisis to safely, securely, and anonymously surrender a newborn if they can't care for it. A notification system alerts first responders the second an infant is dropped off. Within the last week, a baby was placed in one in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Officials didn't give many details, but say firefighters were able to tend to the child in less than 90 seconds, and the newborn is healthy. It's the first time anyone's used one in the state, but more than 100 boxes are set up at police stations, fire stations, and hospitals in 9 states. Monica Ricks, CBS News.
A new study of 2 million births in California finds black mothers are twice as likely to die after childbirth than white mothers, and the same goes for their babies. This is regardless of socioeconomic status of the mothers. CBS News Brief. I'm Linda Kenyon.
Attention business. When you hire your local CertaPro painters, you get the power of doing it right. Detailed project proposals, excellent customer service, and trusted professionals who get the job done on time and on budget. The power of experience. We're kings of the scaffolding and pros with the stucco. We've been there, done that. Get your project started at CertaPro.com and get the power of pro.
CertaPro Painters business is independently owned and operated. Home improvement contract registration numbers are available at CertaPro.com.
Your source for the AccuWeather forecast. Hear it on News Radio KDKA.
100.1 FM and AM 1020 KDKA. Covered by JP Roofing and Siding, Pittsburgh's #1 platinum preferred roofing company.
At AHN, we see you juggling 100 things at once. That's why we made it easier to book with the doctors you need. With AHN online scheduling, you can book with your primary care provider or get time with a specialist. Visit ahn.org/schedule, answer a couple of simple questions, and search for providers, locations, and times that work best for you. Easy online scheduling. Because at AHN, we see you.
If you're drowning in IRS debt and can't afford to pay, then you need to take advantage of special IRS tax programs that are available and free yourself from IRS collection efforts once and for all. Due to the financial hardship consumers are facing throughout the country, the Internal Revenue Service has made it easier to settle delinquent tax problems. An open phone line has been established by Community Tax for consumers to call and see if they qualify. Take down this number or store it in your cell phone, but call the Community Tax Helpline at 800-514-1026. If you owe back taxes to the IRS and cannot afford to pay them back, or even if you have years of unfiled tax returns, there's no need to fear anymore. But you have to call the Community Tax Helpline today at 800-514-1026 for the help that you need. Don't take on the IRS alone. They can attack your wages, savings, pension, home, and even your Social Security check. Call 800-514-1026 for your free consultation and to see if you qualify. That's 800-514-1026.
Here's the latest from the KDKA Community Message Board.
The city of Pittsburgh celebrates the life and works of playwright August Wilson throughout Black History Month. A downtown display and online salute showcase Pittsburgh's native son. Learn what's happening in February at KDKARadio.com. Cardiovascular disease is a leading cause of maternal death in the U.S. and can contribute to health problems later in life. That's why throughout February, American Heart Month, March of Dimes is driving awareness of this serious disease. Learn more at marchofdimes.org. The amateur boxing match Donnybrook is back on Friday, March 10th at the Priory's Grand Hall on Pittsburgh's North Side. This fundraiser benefits the local nonprofit Ireland Institute of Pittsburgh. Learn more and reserve your tickets at iioftitt.org.
Keep listening for updates from the KDKA Community Message Board. Details at KDKARadio.com.
If you own a business, this has been a bumpy ride. From pandemic to inflation, I'm sure you could use a break. If your business has 5 or more employees and survived COVID, you might be eligible to receive a payroll tax refund of up to $26,000 per employee. The challenge is getting your hands on it. Hi, I'm Howard Mackler, and that's why I founded GetRefunds.com to cut through the red tape and get you the money. The team of tax attorneys we have put together are highly trained in this little-known payroll tax refund program. We do all the work, charge not a dime up front, and simply share a percentage of the cash that we get for you. Businesses of all types can qualify, including those that took PPP, nonprofits, and even those that had increases in sales. We have helped return over $1 billion to businesses, and we can help you too. Just go to getrefunds.com/news, click on Qualify Me, and answer a few questions. This payroll tax refund is only available for a limited period of time. Don't lose out on up to $26,000 per employee. Go to getrefunds.com/news. That's getrefunds.com/news.
Hi, this is Dr. Rafferty. The Disc Institute of Pittsburgh specializes in a non-surgical disc that will fix the problem and allow your disc to heal. Call 412-906-9600 or go to PittsburghDiscInstitute.com. We're here for you.
Memo 1073 celebrates, respects, and represents our Black history.
B. Marshall talks about Juneteenth in Western Pennsylvania.
I had to learn about Juneteenth. I didn't know about Juneteenth when growing up. It's incumbent upon each person and each family to try to educate yourself about what's going on in your culture and your own history. You know, I'm learning every day.
For more stories on Black excellence, download the free Odyssey app. Just search AUTACY.
From the African American Chamber of Commerce.
The KDKA AccuWeather forecast is brought to you by JP Roofing and Siding, Pittsburgh's #1 Platinum Preferred Roofing Replacement Contractor. Call 412-829-7711.
For today, sun through high clouds with a high of 50 degrees. Tonight, clear skies, low of 26. Tomorrow, sunny to partly cloudy, high of 50. Mild again for Tuesday, increasingly cloudy, though, with a high of 52 for the afternoon. For AccuWeather, meteorologist Matt Benz, 100.1 FM and AM 1020, KDKA.
Good evening and welcome to Amplify, a telephone talk show that looks at life from a religious perspective. I'm Father Ron Lingwin, hoping that you have felt the warmth of God's love in your life this day, but especially the joy you feel when you share that love with others. And I want to say something about that, but first I'd like to begin, as I do each week, with a story that is based on faith and formed with imagination. I try to find a story that somehow almost directly fits with the topic of the evening. This one wasn't that way. It was just because it appealed to me so much when I selected it and didn't know that it was going to fit into other things that I would experience this day. It was a bright, sunny day, but a cool, gentle breeze flowed from the water below. It was also a good and productive day, for many people would come to listen to Jesus. It was John who said, "Master, I am so pleased with you." The others seemed to smirk. Jesus replied, "I'm pleased that you are pleased, John." There was laughter. Jesus said, "I did not mean to be funny." "Yes," Peter said, "but it is I who bring the crowds to the Master," and the laughter only increased. "Give him time," Jesus said. "Give him time." John hung his head. Jesus touched his arm and said, "Look up." And then as a tear slowly trickled from his eye, John said, "Master, the Father is always with you. He tells you what to say, and then he helps you. But what about us? We are nothing but fools. We follow you, we listen to you, but you learn from me," Jesus said. "Yes," Peter said, "we learn, but how do we know the Father is within us?" Jesus answered, "Why do you ask that? The Father is always with each and every person." "Within the sinner?" Judas asked. "Yes," Jesus answered, "even with the sinner. For you are all special souls. Each of you is a gift. You are his creation, his work." "But some of us fail," John said. "That is true," Jesus said. "But the Father is always there to help mold you if you wish to grow in his image through his word." Then he looked down at the water below and said, "Feel the cool breeze that the water brings up to us. And look up at the sky, at the sun. Feel its warmth. That warmth is like the Father's love. And the breeze is like a gentle kiss, a gentle love. Look around you. Look up, look down." There was so much emotion in Jesus' voice that shivers ran through the bodies of those who had followed him for quite a while. Jesus said, "How can you say that the Father does not love you when you see what he has created?" There was silence. Not a word was spoken, but there were tears in each man's eyes. A story of faith and imagination. Our guest this evening writes in his latest book titled Africa and the Early Church, The Almost Forgotten Roots of Christianity. The first thing you have to know about this book is that it's not a book about race. The idea of race makes no sense to a Christian in the 2nd century. The Africa we'll be talking about is a land of all kinds of races, from dark-skinned Ethiopians to blonde Germanic barbarians, but we'll be more interested in what they thought than what they looked like. When we do mention race, it will be mostly to remark that the ancient Romans didn't care much about it, not because they were better than we are, but because they were bad in different ways. They cared about your class and ancestry, they cared about your education, and they cared a lot about your money, but they didn't care much about the color of your skin. I bring this up right at the beginning because this book grew out of an article I wrote a while ago. And when that article came out, the internet exploded, or at least a little corner of the internet I pay attention to. People wrote to me to tell me angrily that Augustine wasn't black. I never said he was, but why would it matter? Other people were just as angrily to tell me that I had ignored the accomplishments of the modern African church. Since it was a short article about ancient Roman Africa, I had to agree. Some people reminded me that Jesus Christ was a Palestinian Jew, and therefore Christianity did not originate in Africa. That is certainly true. Africa is a flashpoint in our debates today, and many people will hear what they think a people like me would say, but what they hear depends on what kind of person they think I am. It's usually the wrong kind of person. And our guest is my favorite guest, been on this program more than anyone else, is Mike Aquilina. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thanks for having me back, Father Ron.
The day began with a long gospel. It's a story where, with brackets in a gospel where they put brackets in, and if you didn't want to use the whole gospel, you didn't have to. I never would like to do that. I'd like to read it all, maybe sometimes just to find out why they put the brackets in. And I can understand why. Sometimes it's not perhaps the words of Jesus, scholarship today would say. But and it made me start thinking about what Jesus went through each day. The story here is just one story of some 1,000 I have, where Jesus is trying to teach the people about his Father, and not always easy, because we get so much caught up in ourself and our problems that our relationship with God somehow takes second place. Fortunately, that's not all the time. But as I thought about it, and what Jesus went through here, he was respecting everyone, telling them, okay, now there are a lot of people, you've learned a lot of things. There's a lot of things you've learned, and people told you this or that. But listen to me. Listen what I have to say, because it makes a big difference to what you're paying attention to. And it led me to want to pay attention more to what was happening this day. So I paid a lot more attention. And listening to the news, I heard how, and it was from this morning, so I don't know what it might be now, the numbers that talking about the earthquake in Turkey, 1 million people homeless, 35,000 people having died to that point. Undoubtedly, that number is still worse, I'm sure. And then all kinds of things about the Super Bowl tonight that's going on, even as you and I talk here. Then tonight, did you happen to notice the sky tonight? It was incredibly beautiful. There were streams of pink or red across the sky. Was it like I didn't see it last night? I was wondering how that happens.
I was with my grandsons, and I made them look at it because it was so beautiful. Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
I just didn't understand how the weather was such, or the clouds were, that it wasn't like a big blotch in the sky, but it was lines. Yes. And it was just fascinating, and it stayed there for a long time. And then I was watching a program, and it had been after I had a phone call with Manfred Honeck, and it was like I was supposed to see this program where they were talking about how the Hinduism, Buddhism, and others like them believe that the universe started with one note. That's how it was created. God created, there is divinity, but how did God create it? They said they believed it was with one note, Om, that they, of course, use in their meditations. And they got into a discussion then about sacred sounds and visual representations of sound waves, and talking about how power could be amplified, sound could be amplified to lift heavy weight. They see that happening in the future.
Wow.
That a lot of things are happening that we never understood in terms of how God's power is among us in the world in which we live. And they came to the point about music, acoustic technology, that sounds can be used to unite heaven and earth. We use music that way. That's part of the process. And they were reminding us of the power of music through its beauty. Got pretty esoteric in many ways. But the example they used was that Joshua brought down the walls of Jericho.
Right.
Which was, in the past it was like, oh, okay, it happened somewhat. And there was nothing we could point to say that that's true.
Yeah, it was a commonplace of the early church fathers that the world was sung into existence by the angels. That's how God used the angels to create the world. They sang the world into existence. And there's just so much there. Well, it leads me to the book, because I thought back to the experience of reading the book. I had read the book by then, and when I started it, I thought the way it begun and the reason for which you wrote it, I thought, this is a little bit different of approach to the way he writes, why he's writing, so spiritual and so rich in so many ways. And it seemed to be more history when I looked at it, as I go through all the books before I actually read it. But then I read it, and I thought, wow, this is a beautiful book. Well, thank you.
About Africa. And I knew that, of course, St. Augustine and other great saints were from Africa, but I never thought of Africa in and of itself. I knew nothing about Africa.
Yeah. And I think most people don't know the story of Africa and how it played into the early history of Christianity. Just the great streams of influence that poured into the church, both East and West. My focus in the book was mostly the Western church because that's where I live. But, the way we worship in the Western church is largely a gift of Africa. In Rome, the city of Rome. We think of ourselves as Roman Catholics, right?
Yes.
But the Roman liturgy was celebrated in Greek probably until the middle of the 4th century. It's at the end of the 100s that the North African Christians started to use Latin in their liturgy. And it's likely from North Africa that we got our Latin liturgy and so many other liturgical developments after that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Tell us a little bit then about why you wrote this book. I raised the issue in the preface.
Well, my editor out in California, I write for Angelus News Service, and my editor, Pablo K., asked me if I would write something on Africa and the early church. This was about 3 or 4 years ago. And I wrote something, and I was surprised by the response. Pablo said that article got more engagement than anything else that they had run that year. More engagement from readers than anything else. It had been shared, commented upon. People were responding to it in many different ways. And Pablo was just so stunned by that, and so was I, because I'm writing history, and usually people don't engage with history so much in our day and age. Largely, people are ignorant of history in our day and age. Our memory goes back maybe 20 years. No more than that.
Well, when you get older, mine doesn't even go that far. Well, that isn't true. You think about the past,
right? But not the recent.
Not the recent.
So I was really surprised, and I started thinking about this, and I thought people need to know this story. People need to know it because they are completely unaware of the influence that Africa has had
on the church, both East and West.
One of the first questions you deal with is what did the ancient writers mean by Africa?
Yeah. So I talk a bit about that. We have ideas today, and the ideas are bound up with race and with more recent history, with ideas like colonialism and that sort of thing. But what did it mean in that time? The time when Christianity was just emerging in the world, and Africa was undergoing a very interesting period at that time, especially the countries of Roman Africa. Northern Africa, the countries today that are Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco. Those countries were undergoing this cultural renaissance, really, at that time. You think of the great pagan writers who were there at that time. The playwright Terence, we think of him as a Roman. Well, he was writing from North Africa. The novelist Apuleius, the historian Suetonius, the rhetorician Fronto, and the great lawyer, the jurist Salvius Julianus, he compiled the standard collection of precedents in Roman law. So there was all of this literary and cultural activity going on in those lands at that time, and it was all finding its way to Rome and influencing intellectual life on what we would call the mainland, the European mainland. But the ideas were originating there in North Africa, where there was a vibrant Latin culture just rising up at that time.
What are the three ancient civilizations upon which you have focused that you believe made a unique contribution to Christianity?
Well, there's Roman North Africa, Latin Africa, the countries I was just talking about. Then also there's Egypt and Alexandria, especially within Egypt. Alexandria was the intellectual capital of the Greek and Roman world at that time. It had the great library there, largest library in the world at the time. There were universities, there were research centers, all of these things going on in that city. So yes, Egypt was important in the development of Christianity, but also just in the world at large. And finally, there was Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, sub-Saharan Africa, where they were getting their Christianity from different strains, really. They were influenced by the Copts in Egypt, but it's quite likely that Christianity was there in those countries from the first century. We look at the Acts of the Apostles, and we find in chapter 8 the encounter between Philip and the eunuch, the Ethiopian eunuch, who's a court official, we're told, of the Candace, who's the queen of the Ethiopians. Now, that guy is there for the celebration of the festival. And eventually he would have made his way back to his home country, and surely he brought the gospel with him. There were many Jews in Ethiopia. According to tradition, they had been there since the time of Solomon. So he would have brought it back to a country where there would be people who would understand what he was talking about and understanding the Old Testament roots of the New Testament message.
And yet Christianity, you point out, spread in some ways because there was a port city.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't radio or television. It wasn't two people talking on the air about it. And it spread that way, and not even in the Latin language. Eventually, it came to that, but as you've already said, people spoke
Greek.
Spoke Greek.
Right. And that was the language of trade. That was the language of the world. But the great centers of Christianity in Africa were Carthage, a port city, right, and Alexandria in Egypt, another port city where there was the great lighthouse and all of those other things I already mentioned. But when you have a port city like that, you had military people coming in and out. You had commercial traffic all the time, people coming from all corners of the world bringing new ideas. And so Christianity was among those new ideas that came into these port cities and likely found their way out into the hinterlands over time.
We're coming up against a break, but the point I'll make before then was Carthage then was wiped off the map by Romans who salted the fields of the city so that it would never come back, but it was rebuilt.
from the Aetna Medicare Advantage Studios.
Pittsburgh's news, weather, and traffic station. News Radio.
CBS News Brief. Another day, another shoot-down of an object in U.S. airspace. General Glenn Van Herk, the commander of NORAD, says this might not be the end of it.
I'm not currently tracking any other objects at this point. That doesn't mean there couldn't be more at some point in the future, but right now we're not seeing anything.
The U.S. military has shot down 3 aerial objects in the past 3 days. Kansas City Chiefs fans remain optimistic even as the Philadelphia Eagles have been leading in the second half of Super Bowl 57. The score is 27-21. Some 33,000 deaths after those back-to-back earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. MTS Taib is getting a first-hand look at the situation in Turkey.
Buildings, as far as the eye can see, just crumbled into dust. And life here, for so many, is a misery.
Turkey says many of the buildings were not up to code. Contractors are being arrested. CBS News Brief. I'm Linda Kenyon.
The following is a test of the emergency alert system. Testing its emergency alert system equipment. The EAS will provide timely emergency warnings. This station serves the Pittsburgh Extended Operational Area. This concludes this emergency alert system test.
Generic Viagra and Cialis are available to you for only $5.
Showtime because he shows up all the he's called Showtime Mahomes because he's always put on the show in this time.
Super Prime Time. He's Teron Davenport. He's Mike Wells. I'm Jeff Turn on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, and SiriusXM Channel 80, presented by Progressive Insurance. 5-yard touchdown to Kadarius Toney. We went to the break with the Eagles are in the lead, but how did they get here? We're going to get to actually how the Eagles got here, but we wanted to update you that the Eagles now find themselves not winning this game after they have been in the lead since the get, man. And you know, you think about the Chiefs now with the 1-point advantage. We talked about how important this drive was going to be for Kansas City, and Kadarius Toney with the 5-yard touchdown there. Briefly, guys, before we get to the Philadelphia side of things and how they were able to build up to this moment, not in this game, but specifically over the last couple of seasons, your reaction to Ron to Kansas City regaining the lead over Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's just a true testament. The touchdown that they scored, what an outstanding play design by Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, you know, to send Kadarius Toney in motion and have him, you know, the yo-yo motion and then be wide open in the end zone. That's how you make things happen when your quarterback is hurt, right? You give him easy plays. You know everything's going to go with Travis Kelce, so you use him as a decoy, and boom, here you go. So I think it's just a true sign of resiliency, you know, by this whole Chiefs team. And as Mike pointed out last segment, you know, holding the Eagles to a field goal, that was clutch. That was huge for them to be able to do that. And now here we are, 28-27 to start the fourth quarter.
Mike, do you think it's going to be smash mouth for Philadelphia here as they try to regain, or do you think we see some of that creativity we just saw from Kansas City for Philadelphia's offense?
I think this is going to be a situation where if I'm Nick Sirianni, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, I'm not altering what I'm going to do just because